Everybody needs to know the answer to.
Okay.
This disconnect between legislature and PSC, what can we do to strategize getting that repaired? This PSC issue has been on the table, I mean, for a long time. We've sat in this room and listened to Bob Lake talk about how important that transmission line and how Colstrip plays into this and how that's dispersed, and that's still California and Utah, and I think he says part of Nevada gets some of that energy. It splits off in a couple of places, and so we've got to find a way to find a solution for this. If you guys can brainstorm that so that you can help educate us and move that forward, because it is extremely vital.
That's a great point, and you know, I think it's one of those where the guys in the East were real active on it because of Colstrip.
Right.
And we just didn't, you know, we have Ravalli Electric Co-op here, which takes pretty good care of us, and we just didn't pay a lot of attention to it. So I think you're right. I think, you know, clearly now it's something we have got to pay attention to.
It's a monster that's growing.
You don't get that transmission line back if you lose it. So.
There's a sense of urgency to all this too, Nancy, and I know you're aware of this, but I'm not sure how many other folks are. Due to Forest Service mismanagement, it's a matter of time, and we're running out of time on the loss of one or several major transmission lines that run through the forest, which they have not allowed us to maintain and keep clear. And so any given fire in those regions will take out transmission lines, and then what will we do? And that could be as soon as 6 months from now.
Or less.
Joe Reed, Representative Joe Reed, this was actually his second term, although there was a gap in the time he was there. I think he was there in 11 and then back this session. He had a bill that he was working on. That was a major issue for him. Unfortunately, he tried to work it by himself, and that never works real well. So he kind of worked it by himself and then brought it to the legislature. So I think between now and 2021, we need to make sure that we work closely with him, because he's the one that's got the passion to keep that rolling. But get the right people working with him to get that issue to the forefront. And also, I mean, a lot of that's on the federal government side. We need them seeing it as well. I read something just recently about some work that they're doing to clear around those, but still it's not good enough. I mean, terrorist attacks are another one that we have not taken seriously enough, I don't believe, in this country to ensure our transmission lines from any major terrorist attack. So, yeah.
Other questions?
Education question?
I do. If it's okay to ask David a question about education?
Sure.
About, I'm going to guess less than 2 months ago, I had to miss a couple of meetings because I was in surgery a couple of times. But Dr. Kolb, who from the University of Montana, Forestry Department, he's an extension forester for the university system also. He gave us a wonderful talk here at a pachyderm meeting. And he brought up, you know, one or two statements, and then nobody picked up on it. And I wanted to find out if the legislature, or who's really responsible for the statement that he made about the president of MSU, the lady president of MSU. He brought this up, that she just got a piece of change for like $500,000 for staying on, or for whatever. I mean, it was, and he brought it up, and I was wondering, how does something like that happen, and who votes on stuff like that?
Well, I can't confirm what the number was. You're talking about a bonus that you might have received.
Something like that, yes.
Well, I mean,
concerned about it,
our two flagship universities, clearly Montana State University has been the most successful. A few terms back, or one or two terms ago, we put in through a process of negotiation with the appropriations subcommittee on education and the Commissioner of Higher Education. We put certain performance standards in place by which to measure that, and this would be tied to certain aspects of funding level. in terms of being a successful executive, if we retaining successful executives probably requires payment bonuses. 500,000, I'm not so sure. But getting to your specific question, who approves this sort of thing? This is approved within the university system by the Board of Regents. Constitutionally in the state of Montana, you may disagree with this, but in the 1972 Constitution, there is what's called the murky line between between higher education and the legislature. And not too long ago, the Commissioner of Higher Education, before the one we currently have, Clyde Christian, was adamant on excluding the legislature. In other words, all we could do is throw money over the murky line or over the wall. And we get a chunk of money, they tell us what they need, we toss it over, we have no authority, very, very little authority. We have authority on how much money we throw over. Once it's on the other side of the wall, it's hands off. And we can disagree with whether that's good or bad, but we all are constitutionalists in here, I think, and that's what the Constitution and case law has indicated. So this would have to have been a decision made at that level. That's the simple answer.
Hope you don't mind me asking, but I never got attention on going.
But here's probably the
That's
good.
a lot of money because it's spread out.
Yeah, I would be surprised if it was that much. I'd be really surprised, but I haven't,
Couldn't be enough. She does a tremendous job. She's flat out ahead of her class.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, yeah, I mean, in terms of, in every metric, even metrics that we didn't put in place, it's hard to fault the success of Montana State University. But getting also to this constitutional issue, this is why it's important for us understanding the limitations the legislature has. It's important for us to create a working relationship with the Commissioner of Higher Education that allows us to put policy we call them shared policy goals in place. We sign it at the end of our sessions in the subcommittee. I signed it. The commissioner signed it. The other members of our committee signed it. And this has been successful in part because the things that the commissioner agrees with actually provides him some tools he needs in order to manage the monster that is the Montana University system. But it's easy for that door to shut. Constitutionally, that can shut any time. Shared policy goals that we agreed to this time largely focused around career and technical education. We made that, and we spent a lot of time talking to the commissioner, convincing him. For instance, they have a new portal for people that are interested in taking courses or enrolling in the universities. And they showed us, they ran this portal up to us. And we just had a discussion about career and technical education. They put the portal up there, and he says, here's all of your college opportunities. Where are we talking about vocational education? Where are we talking about career and technical education? It was like the light bulb went on with the commissioner and his deputies that are there. But this kind of relationship has to be fostered because it's not required. This is a matter of building that kind of relationship, and during the interim, some of the work I'm going to be privileged to be able to do is going to be working directly with the commissioner on the CTE issue. The other thing you learn in the legislature is there are very few home runs yet. A lot of times it's just getting on base, and by that I mean making progress incrementally is the best you can do, because if you push too far, you're likely just to lose everything, and you end up with virtually.
Thank you, because it was never addressed after he was not.
You've been monopolizing. We have another question.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you for your explanation also.
Go ahead.
This is sort of a follow-on, David. Is there an answer for vocational tech education? Whatever the term is now, you know what I'm talking about.
Right.
Skills.
Right.
Right.
Workforce.
To escape from the university environment, they don't give a damn about that stuff. They think it's a trade school, and that's a derogatory term to the typical professor.
Well, that's part of what we're trying to do in working with the Commissioner of Higher Education is to try to change that mindset. And I agree with you, Colonel Sperry. We have a mindset not just in university professors, but walk around the streets and how often do you hear other politicians say over the last 20 or 30 years, and Republicans and Democrats saying everybody needs to go to college. This is nonsense as far as I'm concerned. And many of you have heard me say this before. But I'll say it again. But there's a cultural change that has to take place, and
Sure is.
and just like other things that have arguably have declined within our culture, it takes some time to turn this around. I'm hoping, personally, I'm approaching this project like a person that's on an appropriations committee. In other words, I'm trying not to be biased and try to guess what the solution is before we start. And in other words, I'd like to see the data. I'm trying to run this kind of like a scientist. In other words, we're going to investigate this, then we'll figure out what the solution is, not the other way around. And politics usually doesn't work that way, but I'm not that good a politician. I am encouraged though about one thing as I've had a chance to look at this. I think that two things. I think that we have not done enough in distance education, which in a state like Montana,
And what is that?
Distance education, this is like taking courses, not just college courses, but various certification courses in the trades, at least portions of that, online, so that, and with a state with a low population density, in other words, big state, people smeared out all over the place, access is important. Right now, most of our two-year opportunities are in the same place our flagships are. But that's the way it is, so you deal with the hand you're dealt. I think that something like a community college model and expanding that would be a useful way to go forward, and with the community colleges, recognizing that this is just me speaking, this is me guessing. I'm not done the study yet, but community colleges typically play a role in being gateways into the four-year institutions. But I personally see community colleges their fundamental business line being career and technical education, vocational education. I think the beauty of community colleges is that the communities at which they're located have skin in the game. They're already funding these to a certain level, and once you're funding it to the level that Miles City or they do up in the Flathead or Glendive, once you're funding it to that level, well, you get a lot of say in what goes on there. Not so for the two-year institutions that are within the Montana University system that are embedded. Not so much. This is not so much a problem with the attitude of the professoriate, but they're embedded within the university bureaucracy that is at best really clunky and is certainly not designed to provide career and technical education.
Well, I sat for the faculty senate for 4 years, and on this subject I would have nothing to do with.
Yes,
It
right.
would be utterly useless.
Nancy, do you have anything to?
The only thing that I would add is that over the last 8 years, I've seen programs come trying to address the career and technical, and they took one of two flavors. One was, let's make the colleges do it. Let's make the university system do it. That didn't work. The other one then was, let's put a whole bunch of money in the high schools and have the high schools do it. So the high schools would take the money they were given, buy some equipment for the one thing that they thought was going to be what was needed, and there was never enough money to go around. So what Dave is talking about, and the one thing that they did put in place this time, which is just kind of a toe in the water, is some experiential type training where say a tractor repair shop needs people, or GSK needs people, whoever it happens to be, they can take high school kids into their organization, train them there on their equipment, so the high school doesn't have to buy the equipment. The kids get high school credit and or college credit for doing that, and the company gets a worker when they're done, potentially. So that's a beginning. That one's called the Advanced Opportunities Act that is available now to high school. So one of the things that Dave and I are going to do is make sure that every superintendent here in Ravalli County understands it, knows how it works, knows what they have to do. And the other one I would ask Dave to talk a minute about is proficiency learning. That is a huge step in our high schools that we've only got a couple of schools that are participating right now. They didn't even know about it. It's been around since 2017, but it's a big step for our high schools. So if you can talk about that.
Before Dave does that, Does everybody want to take like a 5-minute break to go to the bathroom? And yes, no,
Yeah.
maybe?
Yeah.
Okay, 5 minutes.
Yeah, I see.